Welcome to the High Level Masterclass. I've got Matt Ratliff here. We are going to talk about email marketing and email deliverability, specific really to the warm email side of things. Matt, if you don't know who Matt is, he's really active in our community. He's been a senior network engineer for over 20 plus years. And I think back in 2021, he got really involved with email deliverability and has been a pretty significant person in our community that provides a lot of value. So I asked Matt, hey, can we jump in and talk about email marketing in general? And so just to keep the conversation with this high-level masterclass a bit more organized, we're going to talk about four things. One is migrations from other platforms. Number two is maintaining a healthy open rate. Number three is monitoring deliverability outlook in general. And four, maybe we'll talk about some best practices around email marketing. Matt, tell us your story, man.
Yeah, so like you said, I've got a huge tech background, network engineering. That's kind of where my tech side was formulated. But in 2019, I opened up my own business, helping people around their tech stack with, their funnels. And so that sort of morphed into something a little bit different around 2020, 2021. A client came to me and said, Matt, I've got terrible email deliverability. Do you know anything about this? Can you help me? And I dove into it, fell in love with the entire process. And here I am. So I used to actually deploy a lot of Linux email servers early in my career, a lot of Microsoft Exchange boxes. So I've got a very concrete knowledge of, MTAs and the whole email backend ecosystem. So that helped. But yeah, that's all I do now. That's what I love.
Awesome. So if you're watching this show live right now, this is the high level masterclass. And because you're watching this, one of the cool things that we're making available is a trial offer to high level. I believe you get a 30-day trial. If you look at one of the descriptions or links below, you'll be able to jump in. I highly, highly recommend you jumping into high level. Matt, can you provide any context to why someone who's on the fence about high level should jump into this trial offer real quick before we talk about email deliverability?
Yeah, well, the platform is amazing. There's tons of things you can do with it. It's super flexible. That's what brought me to the platform. The things that I can do inside of the platform that I can't do in any other platform is just mind-boggling. It's amazing. I love it. You can do anything under the sun, which is a benefit for me and a benefit for a lot of other folks. And speaking on email, if you're using a high level to send your marketing emails, your email deliverability can be the best platform out there with high level.
I love that. So let's talk about the first topic that we had in mind around email deliverability.
Okay.
Migrations from other platforms. Give us an overview of what that looks like. What are some pros and cons, nuances around migrations in general?
Okay, well, let me preface this with one quick item. So I'm going to share my screen, guys, and I'm going to walk you through a
Absolutely.
few things. We're going to go into a few slides that I've got ready for this.
Awesome.
So let me move this box out of the way. So there's a few things to go over of what it takes to stay in the inbox. I'll be very quick with this, and then we'll kind of get into the migration topic. So in order for you guys to have a very successful position with email deliverability, being able to land in the inbox consistently without hitting spam, we just got to make sure that we have proper DNS established. So whenever you go into Mailgun or any other ESP provider, they're going to make you establish the SPF record, the DKIM record, and now, more importantly, inbox providers want you to establish a DMARC policy. So all of that is fundamental now. The other thing is that we want to make sure that we've enabled the list unsubscribe post one click. That's very technical, but all that is that we want to make sure that we've got the unsubscribe tracking feature enabled. So if you're using something outside of LC email, then that is something that you'll have to be aware of to make sure that you enable. Once that's enabled, everything is done. You're meeting that requirement. We also want to make sure that we've got domain alignment. All this means is that you're establishing a domain with your email service provider, and you're not sending it from a Gmail account or anything like that through Mailgun or something or SendGrid. That was a very common practice before. So making sure that we've got proper domain alignment. If you're using LC email, that's a given. If you're using Mailgun directly, that's also taken care of. You don't have to worry about it. You're already doing it. The other thing is that we want to make sure that we maintain a very healthy, clean list. List hygiene is going to be super important. We'll talk more about that here in just a moment, hopefully. Uh, Removing inactive folks from your list. So that goes back to a sunset policy. Super, super important. And I've built something. I would love to show you guys what that is. Quality control, wanting to make sure that we keep, quality control, keeping engagement up. Unsubscribe options, just making sure that even though we've got that baked into the header, we want to also make sure that we put it in the footer of the email, because that's where a lot of people are just used to finding the unsubscribe option. We want to make sure it's there. We want to make sure it works and make sure that it honors that request immediately. And of course, good domain reputation and a good IP reputation, which we'll get into here in just a second. Let me continue on to the next one. Okay, so on the topic of migrating from an existing platform into GHL for your marketing efforts, that sounds quite daunting, but in all actuality, it's pretty easy. And so these are just some fundamental things to keep in mind. So this is what you can expect, right? So if you're migrating from, let's say, ActiveCampaign, for example, or any other platform, the things that you can expect, you can use the same email domain that you've always used. That's perfectly fine. We still have to be very methodical and careful with what we do next. We're going to be using a brand new DKIM key or a DKIM domain. The reason that this is listed here is because that's typically what your domain reputation is built from. So in the other provider, the inbox providers are used to seeing a certain domain within the domain key field. And so that's going to be brand new. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So we're going to continue to build up this reputation. There's also going to be a new set of sending IPs. So with every email that gets sent out from the platform, there's always an IP that gets attached to it. So we want to make sure that that IP address is healthy. Reputation is going to be reset. It's typically going to be set to neutral in some cases. If you're using the same domain from one platform and now you're using that same domain inside of GHL, that's perfectly fine. There's already reputation, but since we're using a new DKIM key and a new set of IPs, we still have to honor that and be very mindful that we got to do a slow warm up. And that goes to the next option, doing a very slow warm up. The one thing that I want to preface is that we do not want to immediately email the entire list upon migrating into GHL from a previous platform. That right there is by far the number one issue that I see across the board. And it just comes down to education. If you do it in a very slow fashion and slowly warm things up, then it's going to make a huge difference for your migration success. So
So
how
real
can,
quick before you go
Mhm.
further into it, Matt, I got a couple
Yeah,
questions for you.
sure.
So can we use high level, or do you recommend using high level for cold emailing, or is everything you're talking about, and I don't
Oh,
mean
good
mass
question.
emailing, right?
Yeah.
Or is everything you're talking about warm emailing? Like, what is
Yeah.
the scalability there?
So the cold email strategy is not purpose-built for GHL. I would not do it. In order to be successful with cold email, you've got to have a platform that can actually allow you to use many domains, and each of those domains are sending very little email. And so if you want to get your email up to, let's say you want to send 1,000 emails per day, well, then you've got to at least have, roughly 10 different domains with
Yeah,
3 inboxes per domain, sending roughly what, 30 to
10.
50 emails per
Yeah.
day. That's
So
the
the
use case
old so
behind
the
it.
old GMAS method is still stands, I guess.
Right.
But
Yeah.
not
And it's,
inside of high level.
yeah. And, the inbox providers are cracking down on it. There's ways to get around it, but yeah, high level is not purpose built for that, nor would I want it to be. This is all for a warm audience.
Great, great. Okay,
Yeah.
so keep going. I want to get that white elephant out of the way because
Yeah.
lot of people are just thinking about prospecting when it
Yeah.
comes to emails, and they're not looking at the full holistic functionality of email. So,
One quick thing to mention there is that if you're using an external email system for cold, once you identify folks that are super engaged within that cold system, put them into high level and then continue to nurture them from there, because now that becomes your warm audience. So that's a winning strategy for that.
I love that.
So how can we make the migration work correctly? So the very first thing that we want to do, going back to the example of using ActiveCampaign, go into ActiveCampaign or whatever your email sending platform is currently, and see if you can identify your most engaged people over the past 30 days. If you can find that list of contacts, pull those out first and then import them into high level. and use that as a strategy to slowly ramp up your new email or your new system within GHL. Before we do that, though, it's still going to be wise to potentially go through a validator to where, maybe ActiveCampaign shows that these are your most engaged contacts. Likely so. You probably don't need to go ahead and clean that list. But if you want to be extra certain, you could use Never Bounce. You could use Mailgun. There's a built-in validation tool with Mailgun. You
Yeah.
could use Zero Bounce, things like that.
Yeah.
So
So
after
for
you,
for someone who's like brand new to emails in general, what does it
yep.
mean by cleaning a list? Why would you have unclean lists in general? Like, how does that work?
So yeah, so there's a lot of scraping of lists from websites. There's a lot of buying of lists from other sources. That's still not something I'm pushing. That's not something that you want to do. But if that's what you're doing, then this would be a really good example. So there could be a lot of addresses that are just fictitious. Could be a lot of addresses that maybe there's no one home, there's no one checking those inboxes. So a lot of these other third parties that do these validation checks, they've got a history, they've got a database that you can pull against, and they will allow you to see, well, these are more than likely your problem inboxes. Let's get rid of them and only focus on these. They could be, once you send an email out to this list, you could have a lot of hard bounces, which we do not want. We want to keep those hard bounces extremely low. And that's the purpose of wanting to maintain a very clean list.
Thanks for the clarity on that.
Yeah.
So importing to GHL.
Yeah. Importing into GHL. Once those active contacts are imported, next, what we want to do is create a 3 to 5 day email series. And typically, the way that I like to go about it, I like to go into workflows and build that structure there. So, and of course, the next option here says, we want to start sending slowly. So going back to that warm-up workflow, this is typically the way it works, right? So email action number one is going to be that very first email. We want to do a wait action. So we want to wait between 24 to 48 hours before we send that next one. I typically do a 24-hour wait time and then send the second email, do another 24-hour wait time, send that last email. And what will happen is that if you're sending these emails to that warm audience, to that most engaged, then what's going to happen is that the inbox provider that you're sending the emails to is going to notice, oh, the audience is taking well to these emails. They're opening, they're clicking, they're replying. So your domain deliverability is going to continue to notch up, and it's going to show more trustworthy from your new domain that you got with high level. Once you cycle through that, then you can start bringing in additional parts of your audience and cycle them through the same warm-up series. We always want to put them through a warm-up. This is key, and this is something that I always do, and I've always had really good success with it. People are going to be curious, well, how many emails do I send out on day one? How do I do this? Well, this is a very quick and dirty example of sort of a warm-up schedule that you could adhere to. I'll give you a little bit more context, but on day one, you could send 100, day two, send 200. You could follow this. One thing, though, that I like to do is I like starting on day number one at 200 emails. And I'm very methodical in my approach. I want to ensure that everything is going quite smooth because there's a lot of things moving. So I want to start at 200 emails on day one, and I might stay there for the entire first week. So 200 emails every single day for that first week. And I won't change it until going into the following week. So what that means is that what we're watching for open metrics are going up. We want to make sure that that's trending upwards. As long as it is, and as long as you're watching Google Postmaster, for example, which we'll get into here in just a moment, as long as everything looks good from a spam complaint level, a domain reputation level, and you don't see any weird issues with your email metrics inside of the platform, then going into that second week, then come that next Monday, you could then start doubling that volume there going forward. And one thing that I want to show you guys is that the one thing that I am asked quite often is that how do we control the sins? Well, let's say, for example, this is a very small list. These are all of my inboxes that I used for testing. And so let's say this is my most active list. What I would do is that I would select on my most active list that I just imported. And what I would do, I will go ahead and select that audience. I'll go to my automation. I'll hit next. And I want to go into my email warm-up workflow. And this is a key strategy. So we want to add in a drip mode fashion. And maybe the action, I'm going to say this is my email warm-up. And let's say that we're going to start today at some time. The batch quantity, this is going to be key. So remember I said on day one, I usually start at 200. And I want to repeat this maybe every day thereafter. I typically don't do any sends on Saturday or Sunday, but the processing between hours I do take advantage of. So what I like to do, and my time is of course Eastern. So I'm going to start at 8:30 and I might end at 3:30 in the evening or in the afternoon. So I'm going to set it to 3:30. So that gives me what, about a 6-hour window. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say, okay, let's add to the workflow. I need to change that to maybe a later time. Okay. So now that's started. Well, but let's say that you've gone that entire week, things are looking good. Now we want to start doubling that, right? So how do we change that with the existing workflow? We can go back to bulk actions. And assuming that this is queued up and this is already processing, what we can do, we can go back and edit that batch and we can effectively increase that quantity. And that's what I do there in and there out going forward. And that's how I double those sends. So that's something that people aren't quite privy to, but that's a strategy that I use and it works quite well.
And that's a daily rate, right? Not a weekly rate.
That is a daily rate. Yeah. So we're staying at 200 for the entire first week, every day for that first week. Just send the 200 into the warm-up workflow, and then I'll let that go through the entire first week. Going into the second week, every day thereafter, then you can begin to double it. As long as your metrics are going trending upwards, that's what we're looking for.
Got it. So I do know our second topic is maintaining a healthy open rate. So these are probably things you handle to build up into that mode of maintenance.
Yeah, so maintaining a healthy open rate. So open rates can be considered a vanity metric, but it does lend its hand at identifying, kind of if there are any problems. So we do want to see an open rate that yields, good results. We want to make sure that we're getting plenty of open so that we know that we are landing in the inbox. It's a telltale sign. And of course, click rates can go into that. But the one thing that's going to be useful for maintaining that open rate is making sure that you have a sunset policy or an email engagement system for high level. This is absolute key. If you don't have that, then it's going to be problematic. And so what this is going to do for you is going to protect the health of your domain reputation. It's going to identify any unengaged contacts. So a good example of that is, let's say that you've defined a 30-day sunset policy. That yields, let's say that you're sending 3 emails a week. That's an ideal cadence for a 30-day sunset policy. On day 31, if a certain set of contacts on your list have not opened your emails, then we want to see who they are and we want to move them off of your normal list. We want to segment them properly, maybe set a do not disturb as well. And then they're set to the side. So now your open rate will continue to rise. But what we can do with those folks that you've sunsetted, maybe 2 months down the road, put those guys, as long as they've not unsubscribed, put them back into a reactivation series to try to win them back. And if you don't win them back, then just leave them on do not disturb. That's kind of the strategy for that. And that email engagement system is absolutely key for this.
Got it.
Um,
And I assume you segment using like smart lists or tagging or some kind of a naming conventions within the high level platform.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a second and what this email engagement system can do for you. So this is an example of an email engagement system that I've built. I do sell this, and this is something that is absolutely critical. You can see the sheer amount of data that is going through this one client's ecosystem. There's 2 pages of workflows. This is something that I spent months developing, and it is absolutely perfect. And you can take advantage of it. Once you put this in your system, you turn everything on. You don't do anything else afterwards. You just let it sit in the background and it watches everything. And to your point, what we can do now is that we can create smart lists. So we can create a 14-day active list. We can create a 30-day active list, 60-day, a 90-day, so on and so forth. So now let's say that we're running, this is just a very crude example of what you could do. Let's say that you are running a promotion and you only want to send this promotional email to folks that have clicked within the last 30 days. Well, you could define a 30-day smart list that identifies those guys that have just clicked inside of an email and send that promotional email to those folks first, maybe at the beginning of your day. Later, you can send out to a different set of your audience, but that could be a very, very good way to let the inbox providers know that, hey, this email is a hot item. People are opening it, they're clicking on links. So now when you go into the second part of the day, or even day number two, to send to a different portion of your audience, the chances of that email landing in the inbox greatly rises. And so that's just a very, that's a pro tip or an example of something you could do. But this strategy is something that everyone needs, and it works quite well with keeping your deliverability high.
Love that.
The other thing is that you're going to have all of this information within the contact profile. So you can see their email ES. The email ES is their engagement score. So you can see that maybe they've taken some action with their opens, their clicks, the replies. Of course, the higher the number, the better. But you can also see those date stamps for each of those events. You can see the open event timestamp, the click event, the reply event, and whatever their last engagement, whether that be an open click or a reply, you can see when that last happened. So you could take advantage of all of this data and use to your advantage to pinpoint those folks that want your emails.
And this is within high level, or is this like an integration that you built, or like what are we
This
looking at here?
So yeah, so this is everything that I've built within a
Okay,
linear set of workflows. And so from that workflow, you get this type of data. You can create those smart lists. So that's what I've done. And
got it.
like I said, it took me months and months to develop it,
Yeah,
develop that system, but it's perfect.
awesome. So what else do we need to do as far as email marketing is concerned? I guess really the next thing is to maintain and figure out the deliverability of performance on the Outlook, right?
Well, yes, we want to monitor deliverability. And so this is also another tool that I've created. This is Inbox IQ. This is my baby. This is something that I spent a lot of time on. And basically what we're wanting to see is that we're wanting to see our sending cadence. We want to keep a regular sending cadence up, but in order to monitor your deliverability, no one can effectively monitor deliverability because what's happening is that deliverability means that your emails are landing in the inbox. But we can discern that it's happening based upon your open metrics, maybe your click metrics, things of that sort, your domain health from a postmaster standpoint. This tool is going to give you that information. So we can see our sending cadence, we can see our standard open event, we can see our unique opens. Um, we can see which inbox provider is the one that we're sending most of our emails to, which is also going to be key. Because if we ever have any issues with this one, this is going to be Google, then we definitely have to fix that problem. We've got to nail down exactly what the issue is because this guy is our biggest inbox provider. So we want to protect it. We want to make sure that we're still hitting the inbox. So we can see your bounce level. We can see your spam complaint level. We can see your unsubscribes. And when this right here is the most important thing, email provider stats. Now we can drill down to each major inbox provider and see our delivered rate, our open rate, our click rate, and our bounce rate. This open rate is going to be key to maintaining that and to let you know whether that's landing in spam versus the inbox, because we can discern that if we've got a 73% open rate with Google, then we're landing in the inbox.
Got it.
So the other thing that we can do from a third-party standpoint with monitoring domain health, we could take advantage of Google Postmaster Tools, which is free, Yahoo Sender Hub, which is also something relatively new. It's also free. And then Microsoft's SNDS, or Network Data Solution or Service. This is also free, but the caveat with Microsoft is that you have to have a dedicated IP in order to use it. But if we go back to Google Postmaster, I'll be very quick with this. The one thing that we're looking for is that we want to be under 0.1% holistically across the board. This client has met that match. They're doing an amazing job. They send millions of emails per month, by the way. This is another tab on Google Postmaster, which shows you your IP health. We want to have a high reputation with those IPs. And of course, the domain reputation is also going to be key. So we want to monitor that. This is a very easy, quick way to do it, especially if Google is your top inbox provider. And then within that same tool set with Google Postmaster, Google has a compliance dashboard. And these are all of the compliant checks that they want to make sure that you're maintaining. And we want to make sure that we have a green check across the board to ensure that we're meeting all of those Google requirements. Any questions about that?
I think it's pretty straightforward as long as you're, going by the rules or standard that Google really sets. So
Yeah.
where do people go wrong with this whole email thing, right? Like, can you share insights to the best practices? I feel like it's like this big mountain that a lot of people cannot climb sometimes. And you said
Yeah.
you have clients that are doing, 1 million emails a month. How is that even possible, you know?
Yeah, well, going back to that, that engagement system, that's absolutely key. That's something that you got to have. If you don't have, if you cannot identify your most engaged contacts, then you're losing out. So over time, that open rate is going to suffer. The inbox provider is going to assume that people don't really want to see your emails. So now the domain reputation is going to start to diminish a little bit. But we also want to make sure that we're keeping those spam complaints very low. If we have huge spikes with spam complaints, then that's going to indicate to the inbox provider, hey, people are complaining about your emails. We don't want that. So a key strategy there is to make sure that you're aligning your messaging with the contact database. So you can imagine that if someone came through and bought items related to a pet that they own, right? So they just want to see emails related to their pet. They don't want to see scuba diving gear emails type thing, right? So we want to keep that messaging very relevant to those folks. Um, these are just some very quick, off the cusp best practices, but we want to mention the recipient's name. We want to personalize it based upon maybe their location, maybe their interest, the relevance, align message to what they care about most, which goes back to that one example that I just gave you. Story-based emails create emotion to amp up engagement. Value-based email, give them something they can use now. That could be a discount, it could be a coupon code, just something of value. In my world with email deliverability, it could be ways to improve your email deliverability score. It could be ways of staying out of the spam folder, things of that sort. And then maintaining that regular sending cadence. So if you send once 2 months ago and you're just now ramping back up to send another batch of emails, well, the inbox providers have reset the score for you. So now you've got to slowly rebuild that trust. So that's why we always want to maintain a sending cadence that's regular. So the inbox providers continue to maintain the data that they've captured for you. And the more trust that you give them, we want them to retain that instead of them purging that data. We don't want to ever have to start over. So those are some of the most of the best practices that I can mention.
Yeah, this is really interesting. And I think a lot of digital marketers slash digital citizens, they come into the world of business and they're like, you know what, I can't run ads yet, so let me start with email marketing, and they
Yeah.
pound email marketing, not knowing the standard of what good email marketing looks like. And they lose
Yeah.
out on organic presence in general quite a bit, or they shoot themselves in the foot with certain approaches and things like that. So I appreciate you providing a lot of clarity here. What are some uh, other things high levelers specifically should know? Let's speak to the advanced folks, if you don't mind, that
Yeah.
have been doing email marketing. I mean, there's a lot of providers that do deliverability services and things like that.
Yeah.
I would love for you to just add context and notes and insights to the existing high level community already.
Yeah. So one thing to keep in mind is that those of you that are sending in very high volume of email per month, the one thing that I would like to stress, especially if you're sending to a warm audience, these people know about you, they know of you, they know what services you provide. And so if you're sending north of 150,000 emails per month, then that is a very good position for you to be in to get a dedicated IP for your email foundation. You don't want to be at the mercy of a shared pool of IPs, even though Mailgun, for example, does a decent job of maintaining that IP quality. The more engagement that they see on your platform with your emails, the better they're going to shift you to better and better sending IPs, which is key. But it could be improved even more with a dedicated IP. But you've got to be at that 150,000 email cap or above to maintain the health of that IP. So that could be a winning strategy for those high volume senders. We want to make sure, of course, DMARC policies, that's now a requirement. What I would preface, or what I would mention, is that whenever you're creating well, let me go into give you some context. We want to make sure that we're sending from a subdomain. So we've got a root domain, funneltechie.com. That's my brand. Whenever I send out a marketing email blast, that's going to come from my m.funneltechie.com domain. M stands for marketing. The subdomain name really doesn't matter, but for me, I want it to be short. But you could use email, you could use send, you could use mail, you could use M, doesn't matter. As long as you've identified that subdomain for that particular flow of email. On that same note, I don't necessarily want to mix my marketing emails with my transactional based flow or my transactional based contacts. So, in that same notion, if someone comes through my ecosystem, my funnels, they make a purchase of one of my products, that next email that they receive is critical for me to send. It's critical for them to receive it because it might be access to my course or whatever product that I'm giving them access to. So they need to receive it. So now I'm going to hyper protect that by sending it from my t.funneltechie.com subdomain. So that's my transactional based flow. It's done on a separate domain. I'm sending directly from that subdomain. So matt@t.funneltechie.com or matt@m.funneltechie.com. Send from those subdomains. Don't be afraid of doing that. It does not look spammy. You want to hyper protect that root domain because what will happen is that over time, especially in your marketing efforts, if you're sending emails from your root domain and you get a high level of spam complaints, then that's going to tarnish the root domain. So now if you go and spin off and say, well, now let's go ahead and create a subdomain off of that same root. Well, typically, whatever damage you've done at the root level is going to carry over to those subdomains. So that's why you want to hyper protect that. So send from your subdomains. That is something that there needs to be more education on.
Yeah, so let's play devil's advocate for a quick
Sure.
second. Let's say I screwed up, Matt. I already
Okay.
screwed up. I feel like I'm blacklisted from everything, right?
Yep.
Let's think diagnostic a little bit.
Mhm.
What should I do if everything's already going into spam? Because you shared a lot of notes of being proactive.
Yep.
Help me what the, prescription, what does that look like for reactiveness
Okay.
once you're already
So
in the trenches?
this is what I love. Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up. Guys, stop sending. Just immediately just slam the brakes,
Stab
like
it.
slam them. Yeah. So you got to stop sending. So there's a couple of things to keep in mind. If you stop sending, well, okay, let's say that your domain reputation with Google is showing bad. Okay. Well, any email that you send right now, they are going to go to spam. Like no matter how good your quality is of your email, no matter how whatever other best practices you've baked inside of that email copy, that's not going to do you any good. If your domain reputation from a Google standpoint is bad or any inbox provider, that email is going to go to spam. So in order to get out of that, and let's carry on. Let's say that you want to maintain that same domain. You don't want to go to a different one just yet. You want to stay on it. How do we improve it? Tough, right? So what you can do is that if you've got that email engagement system, if you can extract people that have engaged with you in the past, what we could do now is you've got to pause for a little bit. So there is a period of time where the inbox provider, Google in this case, for example, will purge the data that's been created over time. Do I know what that purge timeline is? I have no clue. It's all over the board. It could be 2 weeks. It could be 8 weeks. It could be 16 weeks. But what you could do, if you're adamant about wanting to maintain that same domain, what you could do potentially, you could start off on another subdomain and slowly kind of use that same ramp up model with identifying folks that have engaged with you in the past. use them in a very, very slow approach and just slowly start building that volume back up. That could be a way to improve it. I've worked with clients that have wanted to do that, and it took 4 months to go from bad to low. And then once we hit low, hitting medium happens a lot quicker. And then now they were back to high. So you could do that. But if it's so severe and we don't ever want to wait, right? We want everything to be instant. We want to start sending email that's hitting the inbox right now. Well, if that's you and your reputation's bad, I cannot work any magic for you aside from, okay, so now what we got to do, we got to create a brand new domain or use one that you've already got in your own pool of other domains. We could use that as a strategy. And still those other best practices, those other methods that I mentioned, slowly warming up, only sending to your most engaged if you can identify those folks and keep and doing it that way. So it really depends. So that's one of those things. The other thing on more of a technical basis is that let's say that your domain reputation is showing high, but your emails are landing in spam like pretty consistently. What could be the problem? Well, it could be no fault of your own. It could be that these sending IPs that you're a part of could be on a significant block list. And so what you could do, you can go to a block list checker and check against those IPs that you're using. That could be a way to do it. So maybe those IPs are on a spam cop blacklist, spam hoss, maybe Barracuda if you're sitting to a certain, maybe to some B2B type clients. Um, Abuse ad is another one. There's several, but those are going to be the five major ones that you got to be aware of. And so if you're listed on any of those from an IP perspective, work with your email provider to get that IP either delisted or get that IP rotated. If you're on a dedicated IP and something's happened, then someone on your team has not done a good job. They've not done their due diligence to keep a watchful eye on things. But typically, I see that more so with shared pools of IPs because other people are sending emails on that same pool of IPs. And it could be that on day one, things have been well and they've been that way for 6 months. But then all of a sudden, my emails are now going to spam. Well, it could be that someone else that's using those same set of IPs has done something that tarnishes that IP reputation. And so either they've caused a blacklist for that IP to happen, or the inbox provider has taken note of that IP that they're getting all of this spam, and that could be another one. But yeah, work with your ESP to get that rotated. If that's the case.
I love it. What else should we know about email deliverability for this masterclass?
The other one is that we I mentioned it before that domain alignment is key. That's something that all of the major inbox providers are now pushing for. So we can't have any of that those via lines. So if I establish my domain at with Mailgun, maybe I got an emsender.com domain, and if I try to send an email from FunnelTechie via emsender.com, that creates that via. So now there's the domain alignment is not there. So what we're looking for is that we must be sending from the actual domain that we've created in Mailgun or LC email or SendGrid or Postmark. Make sure that we're sending exactly from that domain. That's going to be key. And we must have that unsubscribe tracking feature enabled. If we don't, then it's going to cause some issues with our deliverability because those inbox providers are watching for it. And then, of course, your DMARC policy, you can start with none. That's perfectly fine. But if you start getting into the world of sending from your subdomains, and let's say that email subdomain only exists with Mailgun, only exists with SendGrid, Postmark, LC email, then it's perfectly fine to establish a DMARC policy at the subdomain level and make it a reject policy because we don't want anyone else to attempt to send email claiming to come from our domain that might tarnish it. So that's a good way to protect it. It puts all of these, puts a security fence around it, and it protects your domain reputation. That's the way that I look at it. So that's another winning strategy to maintain that, but be careful
Got
with
it.
that.
Got it. So if you don't mind, stop sharing, Matt, on the screen. So as we kind of close out, Matt, I appreciate you sharing a lot of information. I know one thing about the high level family is it's a pretty collaborative family in
It
general
is.
of digital citizens, and we appreciate your insights. Matt, what's your vision for Inbox IQ? And help us, your overall thoughts that you have, and I know a lot of the high level family members here are excited for that.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. So Inbox IQ, my vision for it is for it to be a part of every major agency out there for high level. This is something that once people are on it, they can't live without it because it's in one single pane of glass. You get all of the relevant information that you're looking for, and so that's key. So you know fundamentally what's happening for your entire ecosystem, and then along with that, I'm a big proponent of making sure that you've got all of the tools. So anytime that you are become a member of Inbox IQ, you get my email engagement scoring system. Like I said, it took me months to develop, and it's perfect. I actually worked with GHL's development staff because there were things happening behind the scenes that I couldn't reach into to fix. They fixed it for me, which was amazing, and I appreciate that greatly. So you get the email engagement system with Inbox IQ, but you can also purchase that a la carte. So if you just want the email engagement system, you can also grab that separately. But then you'll also be a part of my Elite Email Academy Facebook group. It's only for paid members, paid people that have actually purchased Inbox IQ, or my masterclass. And so with that, you get access to me. So post in the group some problems. I'll come in. We can do a live with the group. We can do anything like that. I just want to make sure that everyone that's using high level can use my knowledge to better get their emails delivered. That's the plan.
I love it, and I'm hoping to see you in person at the summit or the conference if you're planning on
This will
coming.
be my third. So yes, I will be there.
Awesome. So email deliverability masterclass, everybody. If you have any further questions around some of these things, obviously we cannot cover all things
Yeah.
email deliverability within an hour, like we just, kind of shared our thoughts and things like that. And there are multiple resources, multiple people that are experts of email deliverability. And Matt, we appreciate you taking the lead on this and saying,
Thank you.
yes, let's do a masterclass and provide some base level knowledge. Any final thoughts to the folks that are watching and don't have a high level account yet? I don't want to be salesy, but I tell people, hey, jump into this trial. It's a rare trial that you're going to be able to jump into. There's some links in the descriptions below for this masterclass. Share your thoughts to the folks that are on the fence around high level.
Yeah, I was on the fence too in the very beginning, to be honest. Once I dove in, I fell in love with it. The one thing that I love about this platform is that there's always improvements. All of these new features coming out constantly. But the one thing that I love is that it gives me everything that I need under one system. I can do everything that I want. I don't need any other system out there. I can do everything that I need. And I'm a very techie type person. So I've got all of the tech goodies inside of high level that I could take advantage of. And that's what's drawn me into it. But it's an amazing platform and I highly recommend it, especially for your email guys. You've got to use it. It's amazing.
Awesome. Well, thanks for watching another masterclass here on this live, and hope you enjoyed this episode for email deliverability. And we'll have more episodes coming out. But I appreciate all of your time. Matt, where can people find you? How can they reach out to you? Do you have social handles, email support? Like, how can people reach you?
Yeah, you can, if you want to email me, you can email me at matt@funneltechie.com. Find me on Facebook. I'm out there. You can DM me, or simply just go to funneltechie.com, and that would be a good way to tap into my email services.
Awesome. Well, thanks for watching another episode of High Level Masterclass. Bye for now.